Okay, so we're going to get started. So our speaker tonight is Brandon Wark. This is his second time. He's a returning speaker. He has previously worked for a gun rights organization, a political consulting firm, the state capitol. He spent a few years working on cruise ships, and he just recently became the outreach director for the Libertarian Party of Colorado. So, give it up for our speaker, Brandon Wark.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, everybody, for being here this evening. How's everybody doing?
Yeah!
Having a great time, yeah? Cool, cool. Well, hey, how do you guys feel? I mean, do you think is freedom, are we becoming more free as a society or less free? What's the votes? Who says more free? More free, raise your hand.
Mixed bag.
Okay, we got one guy, a couple guys. Who says we're becoming less free? Less free, wow, what a consensus. Okay, well, I know how it is. You know, I've been very liberty-minded, very individualistic, very anti-authoritarian for a long time now. And you know, I'm used to that doom and gloom type of attitude. You see it everywhere. You can't help but go online, watch the news, and see the amount of barbarism and violence in society, how much our rights are being violated, what state oppression is occurring, what wars are being engaged. However, tonight, I want to present a different message. I want to present a message of hope, because I believe we are becoming freer. We are becoming a society where people have the ability to do what they want with their lives. They have an ability to say no to government, to get away with things maybe they couldn't get away with in the past. And that's what I want to talk about. So Liberty on the Rocks, Denver, hold your glasses up, because tonight, the glass is half full.
Yeah!
So there are many actions, many reasons why we can, I think this way. Technology is one of the big ones, right? I mean, we got internet, we got cell phones, we got the ability to hold police officers accountable by videotaping them. We can reach other people like we are seeing tonight and coordinate and actually do things, right? Instead of just being that one libertarian guy sitting alone in your basement reading Rothbard, wondering if anybody else in the world is like you. But I want to focus on three different aspects of human action tonight that I think kind of categorize where we're going. So I want to talk about the political aspect of human action, the economic, and the cultural. And those are in some ways related, of course. There's some connection between all of them. But so who here thinks the government is too big? Raise your hands. Okay, great. Who would like to see less government interference in their lives? Raise your hand. Awesome. Great. Well, who would like to see maybe the income tax being repealed? Get rid of the income tax, right? Because taxation is
Theft!
Taxation is theft and extortion, right? Now, who would like to see maybe all drugs decriminalized?
I would.
Anybody admit to that?
Yes, please.
How about all gun laws repealed? The right to defend yourself, right? Awesome. Well, cool. We got a good crowd. It looks like I'm in the right place. So hopefully I have a little bit of fun tonight. So the first aspect I want to talk about is the politics. It's not 4 letters, but it pretty much is a 4-letter word, isn't it? What do you guys think of? Shout out. What do you think of when you hear politics?
Dirty. Pigs. Fake news. Sex crime.
Great, yeah. Right with you there, right? I mean, politics is something that's not a lot of fun, right? It's technical, it's complicated, it's boring. But politics affects us in more ways than ever, which I think is probably why a lot of you raised your hands as to why we're becoming less free of societies, because government's got its fingers in every little cookie jar, in every little home, in every little corner of the country, right? Right?
Yeah. Right. Sons of bitches.
However, I would say there is a mechanism by which freedom can be increased by using the political process. I've spent, as Josh was saying, a couple years working in politics, and I've seen it work. I've seen how the game is played. It's not played how you were taught in your civics class, but there's a game being played. The game, of course, is to enslave you, to rob you of your money, and to turn you into basically a prisoner in your own country. That's politics, right? However, there have been increases in our freedom by people using the political process. Can anybody think of anything using the political process? How about Colorado becoming the first state in the country to legalize cannabis? Yeah. Round of applause for that. Huh? Pretty awesome. I mean, sometimes it's hard to believe or easy to forget that nearly 1.4 million of your fellow Coloradans actually voted to legalize cannabis. I mean, that's incredible, right? I mean, think of a generation ago, 20, 30, 40 years ago, the amount of people getting thrown in jail 5, 10, 15, 20 years for having some seeds and stems in their ashtray in their car. So pretty incredible. Right now, 11 states, including the District of Criminals, that's Washington, D.C., have legalized or decriminalized cannabis to some extent. People believe, pretty much widespread belief that it's going to happen nationally and internationally within our lifetimes. Pretty incredible, right? That's just one small little aspect. What about Denver decriminalizing psilocybin mushrooms?
Yes.
I mean, pretty amazing, right? I mean, the progress that's being made in terms of giving people back some of their freedom that's been taken from them. Also, did you know that in Texas, as of just a couple days ago, September 1st, it is now legal for Texans to carry clubs and brass knuckles on them.
Yeah!
Great, huh? And then it was about a year ago, Colorado, we actually, through the state legislature, and the governor signed it, allowed switchblades to be legal. I mean, switchblades used to be illegal. I mean, you know, whether you're in the Sharks or the other group or whatever, you know, street gangs everywhere, the Jets. Whether you're in the Sharks or the Jets, you gotta be happy about that, right? I mean, switchblades are legal. That's great, cool. You go to the Tanner Gun Show or any of these other gun shows around, see tables with switchblades and automatic knives. Pretty interesting, right? In 2019, when people believe the world is becoming less free, to see more and more options for self-defense or just a cool little toy to have in your pocket. Pretty neat, huh? Well, has anybody here heard of the Free State Project? A lot of people have. So for those of you who haven't, Free State Project is this idea about attracting 20,000 plus libertarian or liberty-minded individuals to move into one state. The state that was chosen was New Hampshire. The idea being you're getting all these liberty-minded people together, and suddenly they're becoming a force to be reckoned with, right? They can be elected to office, they can influence the politicians, they can do a lot by having, you know, a group of people who are hardcore activists doing something about it. So really fascinating, really interesting. We'll see how that plays out over the years. I think as of last count, there were only 5,000 or so, if anybody knows, shout it out. 5,000 or so libertarians who had signed up for it, who actually moved there. But still, that's quite a bit of people, and if you're really motivated, you can have a voice. I've seen how that happens. Another aspect is people are getting sick and tired of the Democrats and the Republicans, the two-party system. And don't get me wrong, I made a living working within one of those parties. So I understand there's a lot of good people there. However, there's a lot of opportunity in third parties. As just said, I recently became the outreach director for the state party of Colorado, the Libertarian Party, because I think there's a huge opportunity right now to kind of push away from these old disintegrating parties and move towards something different. Eric was telling me before it started that actually in Wyoming, in Pennsylvania, there are libertarians, like registered libertarians being elected to city councils. Now sure, it's small little races, but who tyrannizes you more, right? It's your local city government, right? They're the ones with the zoning boards and the housing commissions and the little police officers watching your every move as opposed to larger offices. So heck, if you want to do something politically, start small. Get involved in your local political office if you're so inclined. Not everybody is, and I understand that entirely. Excuse me there, dry throat. Now, can anybody think of any political mechanisms that have been designed that have actually helped defend the individual's rights against tyranny? I mean, this is pretty basic stuff for a lot of you, but like, what was that?
Guns.
Sure, guns. The Second Amendment's a perfect example, right? I mean, the tyrants would have taken our means to defend ourselves a long time ago, except for this piece of paper called the Bill of Rights that has allowed us to retain a lot of these rights. I mean, we see every day free speech cases winning in courts, right? Freedom of assembly. We have so many rights here in the United States that are preserved by it. Yes, it's an imperfect document, but it's been working to some extent, and that's something we should celebrate. That's something we should be excited about. I mean, it's pretty cool, right? Pretty cool. Has anybody heard of Tabor? For those of you who don't know, the Taxpayer Bill of Rights is here in Colorado. It should be a model for the nation, and in many ways it is. But it really restricts the government's ability to raise our taxes, to steal less of our money than they would like to. And as Eric was saying when he spoke up here, yeah, there's some propositions they're trying to get it repealed. And you know, they might do that, but nonetheless, the fact that that even exists should give you a little bit of hope, should get you a little bit excited to say, yeah, there are people out there involved in politics who are fighting for freedom, who are believers, who know how to play the game, and are making a progress. I mean, pretty amazing stuff, right? I think so, at least. And that's why I do what I do. Now, there actually have been 3 cities in the United States who have banned the use of facial recognition technology by government. I don't know if anybody's heard of this. 2 in California, San Francisco. Hey, they got something right. That's cool. And Oakland, California, and then Somerville, Massachusetts. So far, 3 cities have banned the use of facial recognition technology by government, citing privacy concerns and abuse. That's great. I think Denver should be the 4th city. And how fun would that be? And then let's talk a little bit about the illegal immigration issue. It's a very divisive issue, even among libertarians. But the very fact that Denver law and Colorado law enforcement is now legally told not to cooperate with federal law enforcement, hey, if you believe in freedom, if you believe in liberty, in some ways that's a really good thing, right? I mean, the fact that they can't hold somebody in jail on suspicion on an ICE detainer as opposed to actually going through an actual court process by a judge. I mean, pretty amazing stuff. And this is happening all around us right now. And sure, that might not be your issue, might not be the issue you believe in, but it's working. It's working to restrict the government's ability to infringe upon us. Also here in Colorado, a lot of you might not have heard, but civil asset forfeiture reform has actually passed in the state house, in the state legislature, and the governor has passed it. So it's pretty cool. I mean, the cop's ability to just steal your property by being accused of a crime, to take your car, take your house, do what they want with it, it's being restricted. And sure, it's still happening, but we're making some progress on it. And nationally, it's becoming an issue. There was a Supreme Court case. I don't remember where the guy was from, but he had was it a Cadillac or something? It was a pretty decent car, and he had a little bit of drugs on him. He took his car. They took his really expensive car for a very minor crime. The Supreme Court actually ruled that they couldn't do that. It didn't fit the punishment. Massachusetts. So that's pretty cool. This kind of stuff is happening all around us all the time. Well, that's enough about politics. Politics, it's kind of a dirty subject, right? So let's talk about economics. Economics would be another aspect in terms of human interaction that really is one of the most fundamental cores of who and what we are and what we do, right? So I think we are becoming a little bit more free economically because people around us, of course, are using cryptocurrency. That's a big thing. Has anybody heard of privacy coins? There's a lot of people out there really touting not just crypto in general, like Bitcoin and these other ones, but there's these actually privacy coins like Monero is probably the most famous one, and a few others that make it really, really difficult for any authorities to know who's spending the money, how it's being spent, who owns it. Pretty cool stuff. I mean, a lot of liberty-minded individuals think that's probably the future, and that might be one of the best ways we can achieve a free society. So if the government doesn't know how much money you have, doesn't know where you're spending it, I mean, that's pretty powerful stuff. Pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
Has anybody heard of agorism? Cool, so if you've heard of agorism, for those of you who don't know, agorism is a social libertarian philosophy developed by a man named Samuel Edward Konkin III back many decades ago. But basically he believed that through the use of counter-economics, we can achieve a free society, basically have a peaceful revolution, eliminate the government's grip on us, and create a free, civilized world. Counter-economics is basically using, just engaging in voluntary economic transactions that the government forbids, basically. So, an example of counter-economics would be smuggling medicine to get past US sanctions on a country like Iran, right? I mean, that's counter-economics, it's freedom. Or hiring an illegal immigrant to work in your fields out in the rural plains of Colorado. I mean, those are illegal, forbidden activities that the state forbids. However, by operating outside of the state, we diminish their power and allow us to have a little bit of freedom.
What did you call it? What's the term?
Agorism, and it comes from the agora, which I believe is Greek, which just basically is like an open marketplace of exchange, and counter-economics. I actually have a list of references I put in the back for everything I'm talking about tonight, and there's a link to a PDF actually on that topic, which I highly recommend. Pretty interesting stuff. But yeah, I mean, imagine, so many people are engaging in black market activities. Did you say black markets are free markets?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, right? So imagine a world where you can buy your food directly from the food producer, a farmer, a rancher, not pay any taxes on it. They don't report any of the income that's being made. I mean, that's pretty cool stuff, right? I mean, when stuff falls apart, when the stuff hits the fan, you want to have those kind of connections in terms of local agriculture, local food production, and of course the ability to starve the state, have them deplete their ability to tax and control commerce, really just weakens them to the point where they can't do much. Wouldn't you say? I mean, pretty good. Also boycotts. I think boycotts are a very important libertarian principle when it comes to economic freedom, because boycotts kind of represent a market reaction to bad actors in society that exist outside of state control, right? So the state says, well, you can't go to this restaurant, they didn't pass their health inspection. But in a free market economy, say, well, I'm not gonna go to that restaurant because my friend got sick there. Because there's Yelp reviews, because they're on Google and Apple, there's all these reviews about them. I mean, that's more powerful than any government regulator coming in and telling them what they can and cannot do. The market works. Instead of forcing some baker to make a cake that he doesn't want to make, let him lose business from people who don't want to shop there, and let him get business from people who do. I mean, as simple as that. It's all about consent. It's about voluntary behavior. And this is happening around us all the time. So kind of engaging in counter-economics. Not that I would ever encourage anyone to break the law and evade your taxes and, do anything to operate outside of the economic system. It is a pretty powerful tool to create a freer society. And it is happening around us. I mean, just as much as the political aspect is increasing our freedom by the people who are fighting for it, there's this whole other band of freedom fighters, who are the smugglers and the, people providing goods and services under the table to people who wouldn't necessarily be able to get them otherwise. So pretty cool stuff. Now, price fixing. We all know price fixing is pretty bad stuff, right? The government controlling the price of something, that's bad, distorting the market, creating shortages. This hurricane down in Florida, I'm sure you guys all saw that, and the Bahamas, tragic stuff. A lot of people lost a lot, in the Bahamas at least so far. But of course, every time there's a natural disaster, the idea of price gouging comes up, right? Oh, how can those people charge $10 for a bottle of water? That's not fair, that's not right. But people don't understand what prices are. Prices signify, the subjective value of something in society. It's basically information. How much of this is in society and how much of it is in demand. And the price reflects that, right? So prices need to be free. And the government comes in and says, oh, gasoline can't go above this price. What happens? Nobody has gas. There's a shortage, right? They come in and they say, you can't charge that much for a water bottle. Well, guess what? Now there's no water bottles. People are out of gas and don't have any food and water because the government thinks they're somehow going to come in and save everybody. So price fixing is bad. And of course, price fixing of our money is even worse. I'm sure you guys know that since 1913, when the Federal Reserve was created, the dollar has lost 95% of its value. 95%. That's incredible. Why is it that if you're saving your money, trying to be a good steward of it, to prepare for the future, it's worth less and less every year? And that's why I think a lot of people are so excited about cryptocurrency and alternative currencies, and precious metals for that matter. Imagine a world where you're trading in silver coins and gold coins on digital currency, outside of government interference. That's happening around us. It might not be obvious to everybody. It might not be the seen things that are happening, but there are definitely unseen things that are happening in society as well that kind of reflect this growing trend towards freedom. So that's my take on it anyways. So economics, really important aspect of how humans interact with each other, of course. And I would say culture, which is the third subject I want to talk about tonight, is even the more important aspect of how we achieve a free society and how society is becoming free. So back when Pew Research, back in 1964, started polling Americans on their trust in government, 1964 was the high. 77% of Americans trusted their government. Now, anybody know what it is now? What's a guess?
12.
Close, 17%. So that's progress right there. The fact that people are seeing through the lie, right? We're looking beyond what's happening. The emperor has no clothes. The wizard behind the curtain is being revealed. And that's the beauty of what technology's been doing to us, giving us, like the Jeffrey Epstein stuff. These people in power have so much ability to commit horrible acts and not be held accountable for it. That is awakening people. That's one of the biggest benefits to the Jeffrey Epstein thing is the people are being red-pilled, quote unquote, People are saying, wait a second, what's going on? Hashtag Clinton body count is trending on Twitter. What is going on here? There is hope for the future, guys. It's incredible. So, I think culture, though, is the long game. And that's kind of how I was presenting it tonight. Politics is the short game. Politics can work. It only works for a legislative session. Legislative session later, those bills can be repealed. New controls can be put in, new regulations. It is necessary, I do believe that. I believe it is a very powerful tool that more liberty-minded people should be using. That's why I'm involved in it. But it is a short-term game. Economics, a little bit of a more medium-term game. Culture, that's the long-term game. And that's the statists in society, the authoritarians. They've been playing this cultural game for a long, long time. Right? If your timeline is long enough, you only have to chip away at freedom this much every year. Right? 12 years of public schooling, hey, kindergarten just started here. By the time they graduate, They believe that the stealing money out of the paycheck is fully justified, supporting foreign wars of aggression and doing all the rest. So that's why I think homeschooling is on the rise. Now I did some research on some articles and looking up online before I wanted to talk about homeschooling, but everything I saw shows that homeschooling is on the rise. There are resources out there. And then with the technology, whether it's the Khan Academy or all these different groups out there, whether it's STEM schools, alternative schooling, I mean, people are getting out of these indoctrination camps called public schools and being raised in a society where they're a little bit more free thinkers. So I mean, that's a huge sign for the future, Anybody agree with that, you think?
Hell yeah! Hell yeah!
Now, I really do believe what makes society free or not is the willingness of the people to be controlled. It's the consent of the governed, right? If nobody believed in what was being done to them, if everybody stood up and said, no, you can't do that, then it would change overnight, right? I mean, that's the only way this barbarism exists, where people are being robbed and their livelihoods are being stolen. People are being thrown in a cage for innocuous things. It's because people consent to it. Enough people are allowing it to happen. So how do we change that? Well, sounds easy enough, right? Just change everybody's mind. Simple. Well, it's not going to happen overnight, but I do think there are a lot of organizations out there who are working towards that. We have a lot of we have the Independence Institute here in Denver. We have the Mises Institute down in Auburn, Alabama. There's FEE, the Foundation for Economic Education. There's a lot of cool groups out there who are reaching out to young people and giving them alternative takes on what's going on. Say, wait a second, you're being lied to, right? People are getting engaged. There's a lot of summer programs and internships and graduate seminars. Stuff's happening. One of the groups that I really like is the Libertarian Futurist Society, because I'm a science fiction fan. So there's a science fiction group out there that awards every year to the best science fiction libertarian novel. Because the idea is you're changing culture. I mean, does anybody have a book help open their eyes or help you become a little bit more liberty-minded person? Name a book, somebody.
The Giver.
The Giver?
1984.
1984.
Good answer, Ken.
Anybody else?
Atlas Shrugged.
Atlas Shrugged, yeah. Wearing a steel t-shirt guy over here. No, yeah, a lot of what's that?
Basic economics.
Basic economics, okay.
Economics
Yeah.
one lesson.
Economics and lessons, lots of good choices. For a lot of people, you ask them, why did you become a libertarian? Why did you start questioning things? I read a book. And that's powerful stuff. The book can last forever. It can transcend time. Books written hundreds of years ago have an impact on people today. So spreading that around, building this culture of liberty. It's not just books, it's other media. I mean, think about podcasts. Anybody listen to podcasts?
Guilty.
A lot of people listen to podcasts, and there's a huge amount of liberty-leaning podcasts out there. So, the resources, you could just be endlessly entertained by freedom type of thinkers and speakers, where in the past you couldn't find any of that. So, pretty cool stuff. There's so much going on. There's an explosion in content because of the internet. It is seeping into our culture, and that's why I'm hopeful, because I think the future is freedom. When you look at where technology is going, this exponential growth. Like if you saw Kyle's shirt, print guns, not money. I mean, you could print a firearm in your own home, and if you watch YouTube, you can go find a CNC machine and make your own AR-15. I mean, pretty cool stuff, right? But you can't stop what's coming in the future, which is people wanting to be free. Everybody wants to be free. So, whether it's the short-term political solution, which I think it plays an important role, or more of a medium-term kind of building the economic infrastructure for a society without the state, or just trying to focus on culture, whether it's engaging in something like the National Sports Shooting Foundation, getting kids out there enjoying firearms, getting people out there engaging with their ability to defend themselves. I think the future of freedom is bright. I really do, and I hope you guys do too after talking tonight. I think there's a lot of resources going forward for that. So thank you guys very much. That's about all I got. If you have any questions or comments, I'd be happy to address any of them.
I have a question. Because a lot more frequently I'm seeing what I would call, mainstream debates about nullification, personal nullification, or or tax resistance, or like you mentioned with the city and county of Denver saying they're going to not agree with basically purposeful civil disobedience, right? I grew up in a time where I can remember people going to jail for life in prison for engaging in some of those, what you might consider to be semi-innocuous expressions of civil disobedience. Like, okay, I didn't file my tax returns for a while and I lied about this. By the time I'm done, I'm going to jail for 63 years. Or I printed off that AR lower and I didn't serialize it, and so now I'm in people are going to life in prison in California right now for owning the wrong kind of guns. So somebody gets a knock on the door because there was a noise complaint from their neighbors. They walk in, they see guns that aren't legal in California anymore. They get arrested for that. They get charged with illegal possession of XYZ guns plus magazines times 63, and by the time they're free, again, they'll be dead. You know, so there is kind of a I guess my question to you is, one, you know, the balance. What are your thoughts on the balance between willful civil disobedience that can become a culture in itself, and the risk of permanent loss of personal freedom at the hands of the state? And then I guess that's one question I have that I've wrestled with. And the other one is some of the examples you gave with, like, for example, smugglers and a variety of things that I consider to be illegal. They're illegal, but maybe that's not justified. But what's your thoughts on the implications of morality and voluntary participation in some self-restraint within a society based on moral principles versus legal enforced mandate?
Yeah, well, I think the United States in particular is a very libertarian country. We are a country of disobeyers, right? I mean, throwing the T in, the harbor and standing up and saying, no, we're going to go ahead and, we're a country made of smugglers and, criminals and people who rejected the status quo back home, and they moved here to create a new life based on freedom. And I really believe that's part of the reason why people moved to Colorado, because they want to experience some freedom. They see what's going on in California or back east in some of these states where they're overregulated, they're overtaxed, they're over-controlled. They want to breathe that fresh mountain air and do what they want with their lives. I think that message resonates with almost anybody if presented correctly. Willful acts of civil disobedience are probably one of the best ways, or one of the ways we are going to achieve a free society. But it's going to take critical mass, It's going to take enough people getting together and doing something about it. I mean, we see right now with protests going on all around the country, all around the world. I mean, whether it's Hong Kong, Russia, all these different places where these mass France, the Yellow Vest protests, this mass mobilization, this mass civil disobedience is creating shockwaves. Now, some of it's probably, orchestrated by some people behind the scenes. I really believe that. But in general, this mass mobilization of individuals is making an impact, whether it's just changing the narrative, right? When the civil rights movement happened, you get videos of people on TV, getting sprayed with fire hoses and getting beat and killed and stuff like that. That's a powerful image and message that resonates for generations. So, civil disobedience, yeah, there is a risk, of course. Do what you can to minimize risks. That's what you got to do in life, right? But it's all about compromise. Life is about choice, and it's about compromise, right? If you want to be effective, maybe you got to put yourself at risk. If you don't want to put yourself at risk, maybe you won't be doing anything. That's part of it.
And the second half of my question, I just want to see, this is a libertarian challenge, really, is that I see a lot of people in the Libertarian Party side that are so interested in self-determination, self-direction, and that you mind your own business and I'll mind my own business, and that I would say it comes into almost a dynamic of selfishness, which like an Ayn Rand type selfishness, right? I don't know if that's necessarily the highest good, because I do think that there's a place for a moralistic, voluntary participation in a free society or in a community, or sacrificing yourself for the good of somebody who's lesser, able to take care of themselves.
Sure, to each their own. Well, there's a lot of talk about that. 100 years ago, when there wasn't this social safety net created by stolen tax money, it was everybody belonged to, people belonged to these fraternal organizations, the Elks, the Masons, whatever.
Right.
And so they can get together and they can say, hey, we're taking care of, this person just died, we're going to help the widow, we're going to get involved, we're going to help the kids, we're going to create a scholarship, things like that. That stuff can happen. But when you take away people's ability to make their own decisions, then all they do is look to the state to make those decisions for them.
They give up on doing voluntary charity because they expect the government to do it for them.
Right, why should you? Why you're paying twice? Why should I give money to the Red Cross when they're already getting subsidized by the government? Not that they are, but as an example, right? So you're right, but it's about personal responsibility and that balance, but to each their own. I mean, that's the beauty of a free society. And if you want to create a community, voluntary community that is very strong socially, you're going to need to help each other out. You know what I mean? If you want to survive the coming winters and the bleak economic times and all of that.
Yeah, a couple things, Brandon. One is the massing people together. You know, both Martin Luther King and Hitler knew that if you amass 5 million people, you change public policy. Doesn't matter where it is. Several people have tried to get up to that number in D.C. I don't think anybody ever reached it. But there is power and the people don't realize the power they have to do that. And the other thing about, you know, the central bank, the Federal Reserve, in this last kind of burst bubble, Iceland was the country that got rid through the central bank out. And so we have a president right now that challenges the director of the Fed. Most people don't understand it's not federal, it has no reserves. You know, it really is, it's a lash over this country. And you mentioned 95% erosion of purchasing power. There's no accountability to how many of those dollars are in the world. Nobody even knows. But a couple of things. I wonder, do you come from more individual states, like the states' rights? You know, Robert Lee said, where Virginia goes, I go. That kind of thing. And also to change culture. That's just what the enemy does right now. They go into kindergarten and they give that propaganda crap to kids. You know, all this diversity stuff and everything that is amoral. That's just what I would say. So I would conclude with this. We've taken God out. When you talk about who used to take care of the community was the church. And so God is out of the schools. And then you take God out of the courthouse. And then you just take God. 11% of Colorado goes to church on a regular basis.
Yeah, here.
Well, people are waking up all over to things that are happening around them, but it's each individual's got to make a decision about what they're doing.
Sure.
You know, but you're 100% right. I mean, there's a lot of COINTELPRO type programs that prevent mass movements, whether it's infiltrating the anti-war movement, doing things like that. But you know, technology is becoming more exposed. It's harder for the government to get away with violating our rights as much as it used to be. I think, at least.
Your fun project.
I have one word real quick to you on national debt. Do you have any thoughts on, because obviously you have two parties that are completely ignoring it right now. And I think a strategy could be a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution. I just want to get your thoughts on that.
I mean, they, you know, as much as the Constitution or the Bill of Rights protects some of our rights, they don't follow the whole thing. So my biggest concern with putting new amendments on the Constitution is, for one, if there's a convention of states or something like that, are they really going to do good stuff, or are they going to try and chip away at the freedoms we have? And for two, I mean, a balanced budget amendment would work, but the draft language I've seen, at least, is that except in times of like crisis or war, then they don't have to follow it, which is pretty much the last 100 years, you know what I mean? So they figure out a way around it, but yeah, I mean, maybe in the short term, it's a good idea. Well, thank you guys very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Brandon. We'll be back in 2 weeks. I will be speaking. Jeffrey Epstein. It's going to be a little weird, but I hope to see you guys there. Have a good night and keep fighting the state.